guys, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to The Wandering Reader. Today I'm going to be talking about my top books of 2017. I've been really excited about making this video for ages now, and I finally sat down this morning and thought about which ones to put on my list. I was umming and ahhing about the kind of number. Maybe I'd do a top 10 or a top 5, or I know some people have done the top 17 books of 2017. But then my husband made a good point about the number of books that I'd read this year, and if I put too many books on the list, then really I'm saying that a lot of them are my favourites and it should just be a select few, which I thought was a really good point. So I've actually got 8 books to talk to you about today. So yeah, let's just jump into which books are my favourites of 2017. I must say that this list I'm not putting in any particular order. I think it would be really difficult to kind of rank it in that way, so I'm not going to do that at all. And also, although these books, I read them in 2017, some of them didn't come out in 2017. So yeah. So the first book that I want to talk about is Tin Man by Sarah Winman. I absolutely loved this book. I was really anticipating it for ages because I've read her other 2 books. And then I heard, I think it was at the beginning of the year, that she was releasing a 3rd book, and I could not wait for this to come out because I love Sarah Winman's writing. And this is about a relationship between a man and a woman and another man. And that's really all I can say about the characters and the plot, because it is quite a short book. And if you said any more than that, it would give away a lot of what this book is about and the kind of messages behind it. I just thought the writing was really great. The way she crafted characters was absolutely fantastic. And she was writing about some themes that were both relevant and made you reflect on things that had gone on in the last 20 or 30 years, which I thought was really clever. And this is just an absolutely beautiful edition of the book as well. It just looks absolutely fantastic on my shelf and I love having it. So I will continue to pick up anything that Sarah Winman writes because, like I said, I love her as a writer. The next book that I want to talk about is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This is Angie Thomas's debut novel, and I picked up this copy of it when I was in New York in April, and I much prefer this particular copy of it to the one that's been released in the UK, so I was really happy to pick it up, and I practically read it as soon as I got home, and I was absolutely blown away by what she's doing in this book. I think for a debut novel it's great from that particular perspective. She's so good at weaving a story together, she's so good at writing characters, and she's also really good at hammering her message home, and it's such an important message in this book. So I'm pretty sure by now that you know what this book is about, but just in case you don't, this is a book that was inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement in America, and it tells the story of a girl called Star, and one night she witnesses her best friend being shot by a policeman for practically no reason, and then it's all about the fallout of that and what happens afterwards. It is so good and such an important book. It's one that I've recommended to students before, and I've actually put it on a list of books that we've put together of the top 50 books that you should read before you leave school, and this is one that I recommended for that list, and I'm sure it'll be one that'll pop up in lots of high schools up and down the country and indeed in America, because it is so important for teenagers to read, but also for adults to read as well. I would highly encourage you to pick this up. I read a bit of YA, I'm not averse to reading YA at all, but this is definitely one that I would encourage both teenagers and adults to read. Next up on my list is Homegoing by Yara Jassy. I read this at the beginning of the year, I think. It wasn't that far into 2017, and it has stayed with me the entire year. And I think that's one of the things that means that it's ended up on this list. I think if something stays with you, if you think about it a lot and some of the things that it had to say, then it's definitely going to be a book that will appear on your favourites, for me anyway. And this is definitely the case with Homegoing. This tells the story of 2 half-sisters, and they don't know each other, but they're half-sisters nonetheless, and one of them is married to a slave trader and the other one is sold into slavery. And then each chapter of this book is about a member of their family down the generations and what has happened as a consequence to that particular strand of the family. So, you know, the woman who marries the slave trader, where her life went, and then the woman who is sold into slavery, you know, the kind of path that her life took, and the generations of people that came after her. And it was just absolutely fantastic. Again, this was a debut novel, and I'm really looking forward to anything else that Yar Jessie writes, because I just thought this was absolutely fantastic. Each of the chapters is told from the point of view of another member of the family, going down the generations. And I remember saying at the time that I thought that you could weave a story out of each of these characters. You know, I'd be quite happy to read a full-length novel from the point of view of that particular character. You really, in the space of one chapter, you know, 20 pages or so, you really felt like you got to know the character, they were well fleshed out, and that you could sympathise, empathise, sympathise with what they were going through, and yeah, just totally enamoured by their story. So like I said, can't wait to see what else she puts up. I haven't heard of her kind of bringing anything out soon, but we'll see. I'll keep my eyes peeled. Number 4 on my list is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. The funny thing about this book is that I originally gave it 4 stars, and then as the year went on and the more I thought about the book, the more I felt like it was actually a 5-star read. So this tells the story of 2 sisters who live in France during the Nazi occupation of World War II. One of the sisters is married with a child and she's got her own house. And the other sister is quite a bit younger than she is, and at the beginning of the book she is escaping, shall we say, from the boarding school that she has been sent to by their father. And it's about these 2 sisters, partly about their relationship, but also about what happens to them during World War II and this Nazi occupation of France. And it was just so compelling. I thought it was utterly heartbreaking, but also triumphant at a lot of moments too. Again, her characterisation was just really, really good. I really felt like I knew who these women were, and she weaved the story together so well as well. I just absolutely loved it. This is a book that made me cry at the end, and not many books do that, so definitely a worthy place on my favourites list of 2017. Number 5 on my list is Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. This, I think, was the first book that I read in 2017, and again it just stayed with me the whole year. And I recently read The Good People by Hannah Kent, which is her 2nd novel, and I buddy read that with Russell from Ink and Paper blog. And I was really looking forward to reading her 2nd novel because I just thought her 1st novel was incredible. I wasn't as enamoured with The Good People, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in my December wrap up, but Burial Rites is just incredible. This is a book that you hear about on BookTube all the time, and I finally decided to pick it up at the beginning of the year, and I'm so glad that I did. This is a book about a woman who was the last to be hanged in Iceland in the 19th century. And so we follow Agnes's character, and she's the woman who has been condemned to die. One of the things that I loved about this book was Agnes's character. Just thought it was just so compelling listening to her voice and her story and where she was coming from. And you might not think that it would be as compelling because she has been condemned to die, but yeah, just listening to her character and her point of view was just so interesting. But I thought also the way that Hannah Kent wrote Iceland, the kind of bleakness of the place where these characters lived, and the way that they conducted their lives and the way that they had to survive in this harsh environment was just utterly brilliant. So yeah, definitely one that I would recommend if you haven't picked up Burial Rites yet. What have you been doing? Next up on my list, I have got Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. One of my goals in 2017 was to read 6 classics, and this was one of the first classics that I read. I think it was number 2 in 2017. I'd never read anything by Daphne du Maurier before, but I heard lots of people speak very highly about her writing, and Rebecca in particular. And I bought this really beautiful Virago hardback edition of the book. I just think it's absolutely beautiful. So I picked it up and I thought that'll be the next classic that I read, and I read it really quickly, within a couple of weeks I think, whilst having other things on the go, because I tend to do that with classics. I was just so captivated again by her writing. And the kind of atmosphere that she provokes in this book. So this book centres around a big house called Manderley, and the narrator in this book has just married the owner of Manderley, who's called Mr. De Winter, and he takes his new bride home for the first time, and it's about kind of her, I suppose, living up to past expectations, because Rebecca, who the book has been named after, has recently passed away, and it's mainly centres around this idea of his new wife living up to her kind of expectations, or what she used to do. And although the main character is really flawed in this, I just thought the writing was so good. I enjoyed the story. The atmosphere was brilliant, and it had some really good characters in it. So I will definitely be picking up more of Du Maurier in 2018. I've got My Cousin Rachel on my shelf, so that might be the next one that I pick up by her. The last two books that I've got to show you are both books that I read in December, which goes to show that you shouldn't film your top books of 2017 until the very end of December. And I'm filming this, I think it's the 30th today, and I'm reading my last book, and I'm kind of convinced that that's not going to be a favourite, so I'm happy to film it today. But yeah, really pleased that I read these in December. The first of those is The Last Days of Cafe Leila, and this is by Donya Bijam. This is a book that I was sent by Russell over at Ink and Paper blog. I won it in a giveaway that he was running earlier this year, and I'm so glad that he sent it to me. This tells the story of Noor, who has recently split up from her husband, and she lives with her daughter in San Francisco, and she decides to go and visit her father in Iran, because she doesn't really know what to do with her life now that she's split up with her husband. It's all kind of in disarray, and she's feeling like she doesn't know where she belongs anymore and things like that. So she takes her daughter Lily, and they go to Iran and visit her father and some of the other members of her family. And her father owns a restaurant in Iran called Cafe Leila. And she gets pulled back into this life that she left when she was, I think it was 17, she moved over to the States to continue her education. And it was just so evocative. You could just imagine exactly what she was describing. The writing was just absolutely brilliant. There were moments towards the end when I was kind of thinking, oh, I'm not sure about that decision, but then things were kind of left a little bit open-ended, and I can't really say much more about that because it's a spoiler. But you can imagine the richness of these characters and the way that they've been fleshed out and developed, and the setting in Tehran where their restaurant was, and the kind of things that went on in the restaurant. What was really clever about it is it skipped back and forth in time, and you got to read from different characters' perspectives about, you know, earlier on in their lives and what had happened to different characters and how our characters had ended up in particular situations, and I found that really compelling. Yeah, and I just thought it was a beautiful book. It didn't take me that long to read at all, and again, I think this is a debut novel, so I'm really looking forward to whatever else that Donya Bijam writes. And the last book that I have got on my list is Eleanor, Oliphant is Completely Fine, and this is by Gal Honeyman. Again, I read this in December and I absolutely lapped it up. I remember hearing Amanda from Cook Read Create and also Lisa from Books and Smiles say that they read this book earlier in the year and absolutely enjoyed it. So I was really looking forward to picking it up. That got a bit of a glare to it. The sticker has, but we'll ignore that. And I finally picked it up in December, I think after hauling it in November, and I'm so glad I did. This is just utterly incredible. It tells the story of Eleanor, and she has a very fixed way of living her life. She goes to work Monday to Friday. She lives in a flat by herself. She goes every Friday to buy pizza and a couple of bottles of vodka and a bottle of wine to have over the weekend. She doesn't really have any friends. You're not really told anything about her family. She's very much alone in the world, and she has created this routine for herself so that she can get through the loneliness, I suppose. But she doesn't really realise how lonely she is until kind of the book progresses. And she's brought out of her comfort zone when she rescues, I suppose, an old man who has fallen over in the road, and I think he's had some sort of heart attack. And then one of her co-workers is also there, and they kind of help to get him in an ambulance and stuff like that. And then kind of her life goes on this path from there. And what I loved about this book is that from the very beginning she drops these little hints in about things that may have happened in Eleanor's past that have brought her to this current situation. And so from the very beginning you're captivated in terms of, right, well, what has made her do that? And she talks about Mummy in the book, and she gets these weekly phone calls from Mummy, and it's kind of strange that she still calls her Mummy even though Eleanor, I think, is 30 in here, or in her early 30s. And their relationship is very strange. You're kind of wondering about that relationship and why is she on her own, and then there are these other things that are dropped in, and kind of slowly but surely you're kind of sucked into the story. In fact, no, not slowly but surely, very, very quickly. The first 50 pages I was absolutely hooked. This took me a couple of days to read, and I thought it was utterly brilliant. Really good debut. I will be recommending this to everybody. This is definitely a book that I'll give to my mum to read, I think, and definitely to Stefan as well. I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. So there you go, guys, they were my top books of 2017. I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments below. Have you read any of these? What did you think of them? And what were your favourite books of 2017? I love getting recommendations. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.